All right. Thank you all. So yeah, I do apologize for not being able to be there. I would have loved to be in person with all of you too. And I did. I brought Christy Armstrong. She's my chief of staff. She's going to be running the slideshow for me. And she can probably have a little input when she feels the need also. Um, just a little background. Yeah, Caltrans is on an aggressive path to be the greenest fleet in the nation. And what we're going to share with you today is, where we started and how we got to where we're at. And so it's a very aggressive track, and I'm hoping that we can get through. I think there's like 16 slides, and then afterwards we can answer questions. So that we'll open it up to the floor and should be able to answer any questions anybody has. So, Christy, are you ready?
Getting there. I just got access to share, so give me 1 second here.
Okay. So while she's doing that, so there's not dead silence, I'll kind of get started with, regulations. There's a lot of executive orders and management memos and CARB mandates. California Air Resources Board is very aggressive on cleaning the air. They've done a ton of research and found that the health benefits of cleaning the air far outweigh the cost of doing it. So it's aggressive. It takes some time. It costs money. There's a lot of people, there's pushback from people, operators and the people that actually drive the vehicles. But then there's also some people that are like the early adopters that absolutely love them. So it's starting to gain some traction to where people are actually wanting some of these vehicles. So yeah, pretty exciting times here in California. So let's go ahead and get started, Christy. Next slide.
Can you see the whole thing, Bob?
I can just see the ones. There we go. Now I can see slide 2. All right. Can everybody see that? Yes. All right, cool. So this is kind of an overview of what the slides are going to be. I'm going to dive into a little bit of the executive order and the mandates to kind of push us in the direction that we're going. A little where we're at as far as implementation, what our progress is, what the state looks like as far as charging infrastructure. And then just a little bit of hydrogen, because we feel that possibly hydrogen is probably going to be the solution for the medium and heavy duty fleet. And then other emerging technologies, I'll kind of speak to a little bit about some of those things. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, and by the way, there's a fact sheet because these executive orders and mandates are really wordy. Didn't feel like putting them in all the details in a slideshow. So we provided Patty with a fact sheet, and she can email it to all of you if you'd like, along with the presentations for reference. So executive orders and mandates, we've got executive orders from the Office of the Governors, through executive orders. We've got the California Air Resources Board that's putting mandates in place. We have our own general services department that actually oversees Caltrans and what we do and actually approves the purchase of vehicles. So in their management memos and SAM, State Administrative Manual, they actually do a analysis of our fleet on utilization, and then also make sure that we meet the targets for ZEV implementation. And then there's also the South Coast Air Quality Management District. That's just one air quality management district in the state of California, but I listed it because it's the most aggressive. Several years ago, I'm wanting to say probably 15 years ago, they came up with the rule that does not allow diesel engines in South Coast. So we started converting the fleet over to CNG in those locations. Next. So one of the big things that's kind of going on right now, and I just wanted to mention it, I don't know if you've heard about the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule in California. So this this regulation applies to, drayage trucks, fleets owned by state, and federal local governments. There's high priority. It's a very complicated rule. It's 52 pages long of regulation. We're still in the stages of kind of dissecting it and figuring out what's going to happen for us, but it affects the medium and heavy duty on-road fleet, and starts out with 50%, and in about 4 years, in 2024, 50% of all your purchases, or there's another option called milestones, and in 2027, 100% of all your purchases need to be ZEV. Next. So here's kind of the off-road rule option one. This is purchases, so it means that every time you purchase a medium and heavy duty vehicle within the categories listed in the plan or in the regulation, that 50% of those purchases must be ZEV or near ZEV. And then in 2027, all purchases must be ZEV. This is kind of where we're talking about the funding side of things. The ZEV vehicles are much more expensive than traditional internal combustion engine counterparts. So this is the option 2 in the ACF rule. This is a ZEV milestone. So what this means that instead of purchases, it's the makeup of your fleet. So as you can see by the chart below, that in 2025, box trucks and vans and all those things need to be 10%. In 2027, work trucks, tractors, all those other, pickup trucks all need to be in 2027. And then, sleeper tractors and specialty vehicles in 2030. And I don't know, most of you probably have a lot of specialty vehicles. We're talking like snow plows and guardrail trucks and we got bridge inspection trucks and those types of things. Those are going to be really hard to get to where we're compliant with this rule. So it's kind of got everybody on edge right now trying to figure out which direction to go. Next. So here's kind of a chart that compares how many vehicles that we'd be purchasing per year. As you can see with the purchase side on the left, it gets to a certain point and it's 100% all the way across the board. So the other side is a milestone. You get to kick the can down the road for a little while, and then it starts ramping up. The sad part about the milestone side, if you buy an internal combustion engine, say 2 years before 2030, you have to replace it by 2030. So you're getting rid of new vehicles to make your fleet whole. So remember, it's the fleet makeup, not your purchases on that rule. So you'd have to start replacing newer vehicles, which isn't really the right direction to go, I don't feel. But then we start with the electrification implementation. So this is kind of just an overview of how many different utility service areas we have in California. And this isn't all of them. There's over 100 that we're dealing with trying to get charging infrastructure in place. A lot of, especially in preparation of the ACF rule, most of our facilities are going to need major utility upgrades in order to accommodate the charging stations that we're going to install. So we started out this project with installing employee charging, which was another executive order from the governor, which means that we had, 1,200 ports that we had to install across the state at state facilities that were used by employees for free to kind of initiate them to go purchase a ZEV and drive it to work. Once we completed that project, we started on fleet. And so we're in that process right now of installing fleet charging at locations. And then lastly, you probably all heard of IIJA, the public fleet charging. And we have certain corridors that are identified that we are, public partnerships with the private sector to have big, huge stations installed at private locations, which would be used by anybody. So yeah, the collaboration with hundreds of utility providers, and some are just little tiny towns. The city owns the utilities, and you know they're really difficult to get all the cookie cutter type things that we need done accomplished. So we had to actually start a whole new branch within the division of equipment that's got an engineer, actually several engineers, but a supervising engineer and about 8 employees that are actually working on this project to get infrastructure installed. So here's kind of just an overview of where California's at right now. Got, you know, almost 88,000 chargers, and it's public and private shared. There's not a whole lot of DC fast chargers in Northern California. It's, if you look, it's mainly down in Southern California. So we're trying to address that. It's, like I said, it's kind of a work in progress. It's, you go to a lot of dead ends in a lot of places, not only just because of the uniqueness of getting this installed and the partnerships you have, the procurement is very complicated. Next. So for Caltrans, we've got 567 workplace chargers. Those are dual ports, so we count them as ports. So there's, you know, 1,100 ports or so. We do have a new $10 million contract to install more level 2 charging at 70 locations. And we're actually in the process of doing the site assessments, and some of those are actually in the final design phase to start construction. So here's where we're at with electric implementation of ZEVs. So we actually are converting our fleet. Like I said, our goal is to be the greenest fleet in the nation. We purchased this last year 2,579 vehicles. We've got 1,067 that are actually on purchase order right now, and another 1,064 in delivery, and we've already put 448 in service. And 1,234 of those vehicles are zero emissions, and 222 of those are hybrid vehicles, which means that about 48% of our light duty fleet purchases were ZEV this last year. And yes, we did buy Teslas. And yes, we did buy the GM Silverados. We bought the Volkswagen ID4s also. So far, the Teslas they're really different. So it's a challenge. The Teslas are a challenge because they're a very unique car. It's not one of those you just get in and push the button and go. You've got a whole key card and all that stuff. It's been a little rough road getting adoption to those. I drove one from Sacramento to Bakersfield, and it's a really nice vehicle. Rides smooth, it's quiet, it has a bunch of safety features on it. And so, yeah, I kind of think that it's just a matter of getting people to accept them. So this is kind of a chart of how we started purchasing ZEVs back in 2015. You can see it wasn't a whole lot. When we have your overall fleet count of well over 12,000, I think we're like 12,800 vehicles in our fleet right now. Those numbers are pretty low. And then in 2022, you can see the big jump. And those were because we bought the 400 Teslas and the 600 GM Silverados. So this one's just kind of a different, how we broke it up, different types of vehicles. We're trying to experiment a little bit with all the different types of vehicles. So our engineering group and our headquarters production shop can, you know, figure out the lighting and accessories and all the things that go on these vehicles. So you can see we got cargo bodies and then those pickups I just talked about. Then we got hybrid pickups. We have SUVs, those are the ID4s. We have some sweepers that we ordered. I think there's 8 of the high dump sweepers. We ordered 1 CNG transport truck. a trash compactor, and a CNG utility body with a crane. So those are some of the different types of vehicles that we're implementing. And then some of the benefits. So obviously 50% of all the emissions, comes down to tailpipe emissions, the oil extraction, and the oil refining. So anytime you can get away from the petroleum fuels, you're going to reduce all of the greenhouse gases and NOx and all the different things that cause the health problems. So the Global Warming Solutions Act in 2006 called for reduction of statewide greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020. And then in 2016, California modified it again to where it actually states it's 40% below the 1990 levels by 2030. So they just keep putting that carrot a little farther out. And so we're struggling trying to get there because with COVID, things kind of slowed down. People weren't driving as much, and now it's kicking back up, and actually greenhouse gas emissions are starting to go back up again. So here's some of the benefits that just Caltrans did with the implementation of ZEVs. So our greenhouse gas emissions, with considering all 1,253 ZEVs in this last buy cycle, equals 5,800 metric tons of CO2 reduced annually. And then the big one is 601,000 gallons of fuel per year. And then just the 399 Teslas alone reduced 950 tons of CO2. And it's the equivalent of planting 40,000 trees. So this is kind of a graph showing you how our greenhouse gas, the green line is the greenhouse gas, and the orange line is the miles per gallon. You can see the uptick in the miles per gallon, like I said, but the greenhouse gases are pretty much going down at a pretty alarming pace, actually. So we think if we keep going, by the time we reach 2030, that green bar should be all the way to the bottom of this chart. And then we went hydrogen. So like I said, hydrogen is something that we actually partnered with Global and US Hybrid. And basically what they did was they designed a hydrogen sweeper with the same duty cycle, because we have to have something that can go out and respond to accidents 24/7, and then also used during the day just for its normal sweeping patterns. And so we're looking at hydrogen as a solution to CNG sweepers that are down in South Coast. So we placed it down there. It's been working very well. There were some hiccups along the way with the fueling. All of the hydrogen stations that were down in Southern California were set up for vehicles which only hold 5 kilograms, where this holds 15. So the station automatically assumed that there's a leak and would shut off after 5 kilograms. So we had to work with the manufacturer of the stations to reprogram it so that it would allow it. And we have a special card that we use. So once it swipes the card, it actually updates the software to where it will allow us to fuel. This is a one of a kind. It's the only one in the nation that I'm aware of. It refuels at the same rates as diesel. And then it, like I said, it allows us to operate the sweeper 24/7. There are some challenges with hydrogen. It's not readily available everywhere. As you can see in the map to the right, that's all of the hydrogen stations in California. The technology is very complicated, like I mentioned, and there's been some reliability issues of the stations. So it's kind of disheartening when you are on empty and you think, oh, I got enough to go get to a station, and you get there and the station is not in service. So it's very costly to build the stations. Also, it's climate sensitive, so cold weather doesn't work that great. no, there's no stations north of Sacramento and east of Riverside. And in order to do maintenance on those vehicles, you have to do some upgrades to your facility, and then get those approved by the fire marshal. Next. So some of the other emerging technologies, I know I've heard a lot about where's all this power going to come from, and you know it's going to drain the grid. We got blackouts and brownouts going on now. So some of the technologies that you see here is vehicle to grid, vehicle to vehicle, and vehicle to building. The vehicle to vehicle one is, you know, Ford has touted that they could charge vehicles with another vehicle. I think GM does the same thing. But the big one that's going to solve the energy problem is the vehicle to grid. So the General Motors pickup has enough battery storage in it to literally power your home for 21 days. So you think about 600 of those out there that you're able to plug into the charger and put the power back to the grid when you're not needing it. And it's all smart charging situation, so it knows when you need the vehicle and all that stuff. So it'll actually charge the vehicle and be ready for you in the morning. But in the meantime, it'll put all the power back. So you think about most people are going to work and they're probably home by 5 or back to the depot by 5. That's the peak time in California. So whatever power's left in that vehicle, it could put that back to the grid to offset the consumption from others. So that's really the solution in the future. And then we have also one for vehicle to building. And so the vehicle to building is the one that's for your house, but we're actually doing a pilot right now at our Bay Bridge facility that will power the facility in case of a power outage. So, and we're going to use an electric sweeper to do that, by the way, because it has a lot more power in it. So those are some of the new technologies that are coming. And that's the end of the presentation. I'll be glad to open it up for questions now. Did we lose you?
No, we're still here, Bob. We just
Yeah.
had to
Oh,
unmute-
okay.
We just had to unmute it on our end.
Oh, okay.
Be like,
Sorry, I was trying
I didn't
to,
realize you got disconnected, huh?
Yeah, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I just did that whole presentation and nobody heard me.
I heard it.
So I guess my question is, what do you think?
Can you hear us, Bob?
I know it's a lot of,
Bob, can you hear us? We're trying to pass around the roving mic.
I couldn't hear that.
All right, go ahead. I'll relay, I guess. Any questions? We're gonna check and see if we got questions, Bob. We tried a roving
Okay.
mic, but that didn't work very well.
Oh, okay.
Well, from Oregon, we'd like to thank him for one, that was really comprehensive. Second is we want to know if they'd be interested in having a follow-up meeting to share a little bit more about some of the technology and real-world application. They're actually putting some of these things into the real world and utilizing them, which we haven't had the opportunity to experience yet. So I'd like to ask them some more detailed questions about the units they have in the field that they're agreeable to follow.
So Washington and Oregon said thanks, and they want to know if you'd be agreeable to a follow-up session for your real-world application so they can kind of pick your brain a little bit more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I could actually have the people that are, you know, the boots on the ground doing it. So, yeah, they'll be able to give you a lot of insights on it.
We'll be reaching out.
Yeah, Darren from Oregon said he'll reach out to you.
Okay, sounds good.
The mechanic question, does he have his own forces fixing these vehicles, or is he taking them to a dealership when they go down, or how does that work?
Okay, Jeff from Utah was asking about the maintenance on them. Are you guys having your techs work on them, take them to dealers, and how have you guys tackled the tech training for safety and general maintenance
So-
on?
Yeah, so what we do is, as far as the charging stations go, we do a 5-year warranty on them, a service agreement with the company that sells it to us through the contract. On any of the electric vehicles, we're buying them with the extended warranty. And so they're going back to the dealers for warranty work.
So are you guys
And
doing?
we are, so down the road, we're not doing it right now, but down the road, we are going to be doing some OEM training, especially with like GM and Ford. I don't think that we're probably going to be buying any more of the Teslas because they're not on our contract anymore. But yeah, we're definitely going to be training our staff on how to work on them. And, you know, there's not a lot of maintenance to them compared to other vehicles.
Any other questions?
So they've got, sounds like they got quite a few EVs in the fleet. Have they had any battery failures?
All right, Washington's wanting to know if you have, with all the ones you've had in, have you had any issues with battery failures or battery problems with what you've got in fleet so far?
No, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you a story. We had, I mean, you've probably seen the news over this last winter. We got the Teslas in just about the time January 1 came around, and so all the storms were coming through California back to back. Well, we had like 15 of the new Teslas sitting at our San Luis Obispo yard that got flooded, and it flooded 15 of them up to the door. And so the initial thought was, well, they're totaled because they won't start, you know, they won't run, they won't even do anything. Well, some of the training that you have to do is like I said, those things are so unique. If you try to jumpstart a Tesla, you've just disabled it. So you have to go, there's a sequence you go in to re-energize everything. And we found that those things are built like submarines, by the way. All 15 of them that were deemed totaled are now back in service. We took them to a detailer and they detailed it. Some of them we had to replace some of the interior that were too bad. But the parts are sealed to a point where they are able to go underwater. And their definition of flooded is like 2 feet over the top of the cab. And so they weren't flooded. They had some water damage.
Any other questions? Good. Bob, I think that's all we had for questions. If you had anything else you wanted to
All right. Well, hey.
share before you jumped off.
No, well, hopefully next year I'll be able to make it.
Sweet. Look forward to see you guys in Colorado. Thanks again.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.